we talk a lot about, you and me in different videos together, we talk a lot about how different it was playing games growing up than it is as a geriatric 30-something, and how it feels so hard to have those same kind of experiences anymore. Like something that blows your mind, something that just feels fresh and innovative, even if it's a really good game.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about a parenting book my wife and I were reading recently.
I like this shit. Let's see where this is going. Let's see where
out
this
of
is
pocket
headed.
as this feels. And it was a book about positive parenting and like trying to not just focus on like hardcore negative discipline, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that like examples it mentions is say for example, and like you take a kid, a 5, 6, 8-year-old kid to the store, and you're focused on just buying the groceries and getting out of there, and your kid isn't. And so many parents get on their kids for like playing, for picking stuff off the shelves, for lounging around, for not wanting to just go to get groceries. And the thing that it brings up is that for young children, and I think this applies to everyone for any new experience, but that for them, it's about the process, not the product. That going to the grocery is a trip. It's an experience. It is a new thing to go see with lots of exciting new things on shelves and riding around in a new cart, something they don't do necessarily every day. It's this whole new thing. And so they are immersed in the process of going to the store and experiencing all the sights and sounds and smells that the store has to offer, not going to the store to buy groceries and buying groceries.
Yep. I see the overlap with gaming 100% here, dude.
When we were younger, every new game, especially in new genres we hadn't heard of, or, with a genre that constantly changed like a lot did when we were growing up, every game we played until we reached a point where our like cup of experiences were full, we were experiencing every part of it fresh for the first time. And that has set with me. We read that part of that book like over a month ago, and it has set and just weighed in my mind as the answer I have looked for to this question for years.
I think there's two facets, at least to this for me.
Right.
We'll touch on the like childlike wonder in a second. We also got to grow up during the time frame where games were inventing new genres.
Yes.
Games were pioneering what the standards of gameplay were. NES and Famicom, that's like a little before us, but SNES onward, I remember playing Donkey Kong Country on an SNES when I was little. I remember the jump to Nintendo 64, and I've talked about this a bunch. Seeing Ocarina of Time for the very first time, or Super Mario 64, and seeing what a 3D adventure game could be is probably the biggest gaming impact I'll ever experience, probably in my life, unless there's some huge new technology that we unlock, right? That and those years from N64, PlayStation 2, and moving into the 360 era, we've lived through so many different revolutions where they invented these new genres that, yeah, it really was mind-blowing. The standards are there. You still see innovation, you still see things that are changing, but you don't have these radical 100-yard leaps forward like what we saw between platforms. PSX, Xbox 900, whatever it's going to be, it's just graphical fidelity bumps at this point, okay? Unless Switch 2 brings like smell-o-vision into the picture. Who knows where they're going to, move the box limits outward. So that is part of it. But doesn't the world just work to undo our sense of childlike wonder our entire growing up? And it's like the saddest thing ever. Like, I never want to lose that sense of curiosity, and I want to find ways to get it back. And I want to hear your thoughts, because you've mulled on this longer than I have. But really, that's the immediate thing that jumps out at me is the world just freaking breaks us down and takes away that ability in many ways for us to preserve that curiosity, that wonder, and to just freaking enjoy the process, not the result.
Yes, everything is designed to build you into the perfect societal cog specimen to produce work, to get the job done, and then go home and be out of everyone else's way for the rest of the day. And I mean, even in that parenting book example where it was like the whole point was like, okay, don't shut down that childlike wonder. Let them experience the process of it, even if you have to find a positive spin to kind of speed things along. You can't just shut that down because that is what they are all about. And I also connect that back to the digital minimalism book I was reading, where it's like, as humans, in order to think and to have original thought and really process what we experience day to day, we need time to just let our mind wander, to put those pieces together in the background. Like, everyone's so obsessed with things, and this is an old trend, but like things like shower thoughts or whatever, because it seems so profound that in a time when you're doing nothing, you're having these big thoughts. But like, we're supposed to do that more often, not just in the shower. Like, we're supposed to have time to just wonder and appreciate the world around us and not just be so go, go, go. Got to get up, got to go to work, got to get dressed, got to go downstairs. It's Friday. We got to, the more time you spend just appreciating things, the more you actually process whatever it's, if you have a big creative problem, if you go take a walk, you're going to come to the solution a lot faster than if you're just staring at the screen, clenching your fists, trying to come up with the answer. And I think, I don't know whether, and this is a whole separate discussion, but, I don't know whether we point the blame at our industrial age schooling, whether we point it at the machine of capitalism, whatever. But like you said, there's no room for it anymore. And it starts so young. The interactions of the grocery store are fairly inconsequential in the big picture. But then you think about going to school, and everything is so focused these days on test results and standardized testing. And no, we are not standardized human beings. The way we think, the way we explore and learn what we like is not standardized. You don't find out what you love about the world and what direction you want your life to go in from an ACT test or the SATs or whatever. You find it from trying so many things and just exploring it at random.
By the way, didn't mean to cut you off. Aren't a lot of colleges doing away with entrance exam for standardized testing, which is just wild to me, because that was the metagame when we were in high school. You got to get a 6 score to even be considered for, the school that you want to apply to. What you're saying, I think about MMO players talking about optimizing the fun out of a game.
Yes.
In many ways, the societal things that you're pointing out, we've just optimized the fun out of life, the process out of life. And I want to ask a question, because I've been getting into digital minimalism more this year and talking about it a bunch on my channel. With your kid, you guys are very aware, I imagine, about overstimulation. You're probably cautious, right, to not give them an iPad, to not let them have like a Facebook account or whatever. You think about that, and you're very intentional. And I ask the question, why do you not apply the same kind of care to yourself? Why do we as a society allow this current metagame where you're expected to have a smartphone on you at all times? You're expected to have notifications for your work email, your text messages, Slack, 10 other different apps that send you marketing all day long. Why are we so cautious? Like with you and your kid, you're aware this isn't good for him. He needs that space to enjoy the process and to learn. Why on earth do we not do the same for ourselves as adults? I feel like, didn't we have it all figured out for kids? They get a snack time. They get recess outside each day.
Yes.
They take naps. There's playtime. And when you start reading books about productivity and balancing life, it's almost all of those same things. You need less distractions. You need to get outside for a walk. You need more sleep. And yet the life that's been built, this current little metagame, is antithetical to all of that. You have to try so hard and push back so much against the grain just to exist and to try and preserve enough space to enjoy the process or that curiosity.
Yes. I think we are so wrapped up in goals and in being a part of the social collective on whatever platform, tool, phone thing, and keeping up with the multi-million-dollar movie franchises every second of the day, that like we forget that the good moments of life were just hanging out. Like if you have anyone in your family who scrapbooks or who collected photo albums of your family back in the day, the moments that like had a lot of meaning weren't when you were working. They weren't, I mean, maybe some, but weren't when you were going to all the different movies. They weren't when you were grinding away at something. It was, hey, look, this is when we went on this vacation, or when you went over to your grandma's house 5 times a week, one week, and you had a lot of fun. Like those special moments were when you slowed down and you were just there. And it's easy to see that in hindsight, but it just feels so impossible for a lot of people. Even, I mean, I'm not excluded from this. I think adults think that they're immune to these things, and they're really not. But it's so hard to see that in the moment. The whole, Andy from The Office, I wish someone could tell you when you're in the good times so that you don't miss them, instead of looking at it in hindsight. But the truth is, like, that's always the case. Everything looks like the good times in hindsight because you don't focus on any of the grind or the day-to-day stuff that you let occupy way too much of your time. You look back on the good moments, and it's a little less stressful or like distraught feeling to look back on that if you actually take the time to enjoy them as they're happening, instead of, if you're chatting with a friend, rushing off because you got an email, you got to respond to it right away, or whatever. If you just take a little extra time, it pays off so much.
What you're talking about is the year for me. I've absolutely hit breaking points with overstimulation or overstimulus, whatever. Overstimulated, too much of it. This year, I really have hit that wall of, why do we let Facebook and Instagram and social media junk into our life on notifications on our screen? Why do we have to have email up all the time?
Right.
I've silenced notifications for work email completely on my phone. So the only time I can go check it is when I'm setting aside time to intentionally do it. Our day, our thoughts, everything is getting continually interrupted and hijacked. Our emotions from stupid push notifications. I honestly think there is some truth to like pre-2016, 17 life had a better balance before everything became so optimized. I remember in the machinima days hearing that this was the Wild West of the internet. I'm sure that you've heard that phrase more than me being in the tech space, right? This is the golden age of the internet. And I didn't really want to believe it, but I do think there is some truth to it now, where you really have to put up barriers about what you let in order to preserve your sanity. And what you're talking about, the older you get, you know this as a parent, you have probably no free time. And the free time that you do now get is so precious. So the older you get, the more responsibilities, the less time that you have, the more important it is that you preserve that space to enjoy those processes and those moments. And maybe the priorities are shifting, but for me, I want to still have that childlike wonder. And I don't necessarily know how to preserve that curiosity to just enjoy the process. One of the quickest ways is for me just shoving out the stimulus and the noise. With Tears of the Kingdom, I didn't watch a single trailer. I didn't read a review. I went in with blinders on very intentionally because Legend of Zelda, it's like a series I like. I knew I was going to get the game.
Right.
And I didn't want anybody else's opinion or feedback on it. And it took me almost a year to beat that game. And I think I played 50 hours. So it was one of those slow burn games for me, and I loved it. I think it's one of the best open world games I've ever played. It's my favorite Switch game. It is phenomenal. And I'm super happy I went dark, because these days when I navigate like the YouTube homepage, I'll see videos where it's like, the overrated masterpiece, the deeply flawed sequel to Breath of the Wild, where, yes, it had a lot of praise and strong reception. But man, I just wanted to experience it myself,
Yes.
not to hear everybody else's 2 cents about it. It used to be you would hear about your friend's opinion on it when you would go over to their house and talk with them. And this is what there is cool elements of the internet and this culture, but I don't really know. I don't want to lock down my life and go completely dark, dumb phone. But also, I'm sick of the noise stealing or interrupting the ability to enjoy that process.
So I want to share something that I learned recently. So the typical story of you go in the woods, you make a cabin in the woods, those kinds of things. You eschew all of modern.
Yeah, you go off grid living.
Yeah.
Yep.
The guy everyone references for that wrote the books, all of that. He didn't really do that. He took his personal time, his weekends, went to the woods, built his cabin, and still lived in modern life.
Yeah.
It wasn't about becoming a hermit or just like throwing away modern technology, just modernity in general. It was the intentionality of a time and a place for the things. When it was time to socialize or to be a part of the system, he was. And then when it wasn't, he just wanted to be one closer to the world. And both of us have made videos about it. I've made quite a few videos just kind of questioning like why I don't, trying to find the answer into why it's harder to enjoy games as you get older and all of that. And I don't think it is. I think you just have to be more intentional with what you engage in because you are surrounded by so much more of it. Like you said, completely overstimulated with things about it. You need to just be more critical about what you choose and how you choose to engage with it. I shared in the video we were recording for you, my kiddo and wife and I started a family game night this past weekend and played Paper Mario: The Origami King for the first time. And I have been so engaged in that game. It is family game night. I'm not on YouTube. I'm not responding to emails. I'm not on Discord. We are just sitting on the couch playing this game, and I'm taking it in. And it is an absolute blast. But if you tried to get me to play that during my normal workday or something, good luck. I probably wouldn't have even considered it. And then I think back to the time my wife and I have spent playing games, because we've been playing games our entire relationship together. We always reference the kind of early point in our relationship where we just pick up random PS2 games or whatever and have a blast. And I'm trying to try to figure out why we can't do that anymore. I think back to like the Overwatch, the TF2, those kinds of days. And it's a multiplayer game which comes with its own problems, but also because of its multiplayer nature, in between matches, I'm pulling up YouTube. I'm like benchmarking things while we're playing. I'm trying to squeeze in work while I'm doing it. Whereas this past year, we still have not finished Baldur's Gate 3. We started it when it came out, but we have been playing it off and on for the entire year, and it has been one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had. And obviously, Baldur's Gate is a standout game, but it's that act of when I engage with that, it is my focus. I am here doing this with my wife. I am not trying to do 500 things, and I'm not letting what everyone else say about the game dictate it. I'm just doing it to spend time with my partner in a way we both enjoy. And it's way better than like 90% of the games I might have tried during the year.
I love that because your time playing Baldur's Gate 3 is you and your wife going to the grocery store and just kind of looking around, talking, hanging out. Hey, maybe you want to bake cookies? This looks cool. Let's grab some sugar and some. Whereas
we are clicking on every little thing in the game, looking at the corners of the map, taking in that process rather than trying to beat the game.
Yeah. Whereas like in that metaphor, when you're going to the grocery store, let's say you have 10 minutes to get everything you need to buy groceries for the week. You pull out the grocery list. You know you have to get these ingredients and these proteins in order to feed your family. And if you don't do that, there's going to be issues, and that it becomes a different experience, obviously. And how do you still maintain your responsibilities? How do you still be like a mature adult and find time to just explore and enjoy?
Yeah. I think it comes down to choosing when to engage in it. Perhaps, you need to do that one trip. Like if I only have 10 minutes to do something, trying to engage in my super loose, like, leisure hobby is probably not the right choice. I'm not going to have time for that to truly enjoy it. And I think that's a cycle you and I particularly got stuck in with what I call the multiplayer shooter fast food of we have 10, 20 minutes to play. It's super easy to hop into a multiplayer game, get a couple matches in and feel like we were productive, but then we come out of it feeling not great about it.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, that time honestly could have just been spent, like, I'm just using me as an example, but like if we wanted to spend time better, that could just be spent just kind of reflecting on the day. If you only have a limited amount of time, trying to engage with your biggest source of pleasure doesn't work. If you need to eat quickly, yeah, fast food might work. But if you only have a short amount of time and you're trying to shove a steak dinner in your mouth, it's going to end poorly one way or the other.
It. Yeah. And then you're mad because you wasted the money and all those things. And
if
choice paralysis also comes into this.
Yes. And if you're surrounded by 500 people that are talking about how quickly they can eat steaks, how many steaks they've eaten this week, why this steak is worse than the other steak, you're no longer just enjoying your steak dinner.
The fun is gone.
Yeah.
The fun is gone. That's the steak subreddit right there, dude.
Yes. Your dinner has been ruined by meat choice and preparation methods and trying to just eat it to make sure it's done rather than to enjoy the process of eating the steak. And that sounds ridiculous, but like that's how I feel when people are like, okay, I got to finish, the new Dragon Age just came out. I got to finish it this week so that I can see all the reviews and participate in the discourse. And I'm like, or you could play it at the pace that you want so you can enjoy it and be done with it and not participate in the discourse.
I think of the South Park voice where it's like, you blew it.
Yeah.
Because when I saw the Tears of the Kingdom like thumbnails and stuff, granted, people overwhelmingly like that game. That's some of those really popular video essays that say it was like a flawed masterpiece or whatever. When I see those thumbnails, I'm like, was I wrong? Did I blow it? Like, those are those noises and those inputs that just, gosh, they don't enrich our lives. They make things really frustrating. I was thinking about emulation. Because these days you can get a handheld emulator and literally have like 10 consoles with the entire game library right there. I have been enjoying buying the physical copy of a game because when I have access right now to everything, I'm always feeling like I'm wasting time because there's always the potential of a better experience out there to go and play. I bought God of War 3 remastered on the PlayStation 4 at a mom and pop game store one town over. And I'm very excited because I know I'm probably going to get through this game over the next few months. Whereas if I pulled up a digital storefront and had access to literally everything or these subscription kind of services like Game Pass or whatever PlayStation's Plus Extra Essential Mega Premium thing is, you always are going, well, I could be using my time better. I could be having more fun. I can optimize every second of my life. Stop. It's exhausting.
I've struggled for a long time to answer the people who are like, why would you buy a game when you could just have all of them there? And it's this very conversation. It's the act of taking the time, looking at the case, looking at the manual, finding cool little things you didn't know about the game from the manual because you never bothered reading it, seeing the cool, weird art on the back of the case. That is part of the experience of enjoying the thing rather than trying to play the most amount of games possible.
Backlog guilt is a thing, and I know it's a first world problem, but many gamers can understand this weird pressure that they've put upon themselves, because if you're following the internet, there's more games in a year that you could play through. Think about Baldur's Gate 3 for you. I mean, that's what, 100-hour game if you do it justice, right? That is a ton of time. You're a dad. To put 100 hours into something, it better be awesome. And if you wanted to keep up with the gaming trends, I mean, last year there was probably 5 or 6 other super sick must-play games that you have to go out there and play. Let's say you bought all of them. Every moment of your gaming time is back of the mind pressure.
Yes.
Telling you, oh, I got to get through this. I wasted money on it if I didn't. Oh my gosh. I need to play that to knock that out. And people need to be nicer to themselves. People need to hear that voice in their head that's just trying to optimize the fun, shame them, guilt them, whatever, and push back and just be like, no, I'm not doing this to myself because of all this new tech, this new online constant stimulation. There's something to be said about taking things slower and being intentional. And for me, the only way I can enjoy a game is if I do it the way you described, where the tasks and responsibilities are done for the day, and this is that hour of free time. That's the hour I'm setting aside to not look at notifications or work email or whatever, but to sit on the couch and just play a game.
And be in another world, not constantly ping pong back to our world.
Yeah, that's the hard part about PC gaming. I'm ready to get rid of.
Yeah.
I've got a 3-monitor setup right now, and I'm going to get rid of a second monitor.
Yeah, I
'Cause I
honestly
don't
think I'm
need
doing
that.
that too. Yeah.
I don't want on my second monitor, no offense, friends are
Yeah.
great, but I don't even want Discord anymore.
Yep.
I don't want the distractions. It's too much to handle. And I go back to the place we started. Why, for kids, do we have it figured out? We know that they need nap time and recess and snacks and like a really set structured thing so they aren't continually interrupted and pulled in different directions and overtired. But now that we're in adult world and we've been here for a long time, unless we fight very hard to build a schedule and be intentional, the pressures of the world, dude, are just going to spread us super thin.
Yes. And to circle this back around to games and to the video that we will have going on your channel, you asked early on, like, why we're not allowed it. And you mentioned that a lot of it has to do with just the way older games were built. I think back to, the multi-hour video essays you see where someone just explores the rivers in a game or looks at all of these one little items in a game. You could do that so much more in older games when it allowed you the freedom to do whatever you wanted to do. You could walk around, you could spend time with the world. Like, I think about games that you could live in, and I think about Pokemon Gen 2, where you could just wake up every day and go hang out in the city and vibe with the music for a minute. On Saturday, you go in and do the bug catching contest, or games like No Man's Sky that after all the updates, like you could just go vibe in the worlds for a little bit and just be there rather than completing pure objectives. And these days, every game, multiplayer, you think about multiplayer games, the sandboxes we got in like Halo 3 and Gears, where it's like you could build maps, you could do horde modes, you could do infection modes, you could just play mini games, or you could do competitive games. Everything is so focused on controlling your experience. It's you must play the esports way in this way with your 50% win-loss ratio so you spend the most money, not here's a sandbox, kid, build whatever you want. And the story games are so linear, like storytelling focused, that you don't have time or the freedom to just kind of like we talked about the original God of War, and I don't want to be too hard on it, but every time I tried to just take in the world, I'd like go to the edge of the map and look at the beautiful landscape. The kid in the background would be like, "Come on, we gotta go. Hey, the puzzle's this way. The clue's this way."
PS4. You're talking about the PS4 God of War.
The PS4 one. Every time I tried to like go take in the beautiful graphics, there's chatter of, hey, this way, over here. Hey, listen. Hey, I found the clue. Hey, we got to fight this guy. Come on. Because it wants you to just stay on the path. Whereas before, everything was just like, here's a box. As long as you don't break out of the map, you're probably fine. And I hope we can get back to that. And like I said, everyone can listen to our discussion on your channel for the other things we want to get back to. I feel like it was an inherent trait to games that we somehow lost along the way.
Are you playing a game or a monetization scheme,
Yes.
basically? And the monetization scheme games are the single mode games that can be incredible. But, you look at I loved Overwatch. We were just talking about this. They're doing Overwatch Classic, you told me, which I'm like, oh, cool. I would probably try that. But that is the turning point where it's like, Halo 3 gave us a single player and a great multiplayer, and you could build maps, and there was theater and file share and all that. And then we started getting into the world where it was, no. We don't have single player. We don't have co-op. We don't have theater. This is a single mode game.
Yes.
It's just this. This is what you're getting here.
This is what you will play. You have no choice in it.
And some of those games are sweet. I know that there are the opportunities, like for a Fortnite, where Epic focusing solely on that one thing and delivering this really unique experience is great. But Fortnite's Fortnite. Not everything else can be
right.
Fortnite. The biggest lesson that relates to what we're talking about here, you just have to be really intentional with your time. I'm a firm believer we need to be like nicer to ourselves, because the pressures of all of this new online culture is to optimize every last bit of your hobbies and your entertainment and your free time. And that pressure is too much. I think it's way too much, especially post 2020. Like, I still feel like when people bring up the year, it's like 2019. The world hasn't really had this breath where we go, "Oh, okay, cool, let's let down." I don't know about you. I mean, life is expensive
Mm-hmm.
and it's just been challenging. And so, in a world that's already really, really tough, try and do things to make it easier on yourself without sacrificing the responsibilities and all those tasks. I don't have an answer, and I'm glad you brought this up because I think about it too. How do you keep that childlike sense of wonder? How do you keep curiosity? How do you take your time in this new paradigm? And I think it's a process that we're going to learn. And, if you think about older generations, think about your grandparents. I feel like they've really figured out the things they care about and the things they don't. It's not that they're, putting their head in the sand about everything, but it's so funny if you talk to like a grandparent age person, they've pretty much got a good grasp on whose feedback
Yes.
they really care about and give weight. When you're younger and you're just continually worried about like fitting in and doing the right stuff, I feel like, at least for me, I cared way too much about feedback from people that didn't matter, that didn't have my best interest at heart. And so as we get older and we learn to prioritize feedback from the people we trust, the ones we know who care about us and our future, the easier it is to let go of the stuff that doesn't serve us, that impedes us, those pressures that we don't necessarily need. Like for me in the work email, I don't need to see it on my phone 24/7.
Right.
And if I miss something and get in trouble for it, okay, whatever, cross that bridge when I get there. But this thought of like, I need to be a part of this new meta all the time, nah, no thank you.
And you'll feel less pressured to do your own distracted things during your work time if your time is your time.
Yep. Reclaim your time. I like that.
Yeah. Well, thanks, dude.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, man.
I can't believe a parenting book blew open my brain about gaming, but I feel like I said, ever since 2020, everything is like aligning to the same kind of messaging. And I really hope we take something from it and we don't just kind of get over it as a society and go back to normal. But we'll see.
I think it's encouraging because there's discussions like this. There's an awareness now, which means there is the potential for the next step, for growth, for whatever the next evolution is for this. Because if we're having these conversations, I've heard the analogy that in 10 years, they're going to talk about smartphones the way they talked about, cigarettes being unhealthy for people in like 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I think this awareness is not just with us any longer. And that's maybe the beginning point of something new and something better or different. Hopefully. If not, whatever. We'll be pioneers, and people listening and watching, can be intentional warriors on their own path.
Yeah. I think it's yeah. I hope you're right. It's funny reading old things where it's just like ads that are just like, you shouldn't keep sugar from your kids because sugar fights fatigue, and everyone's just like, no, how did we think that? And you're right, it's gonna be the same way about this stuff. But I also think the solution is often so personal that it's hard to offer any sort of just universal answer, because everyone has to come to their own conclusions on how they approach it.
Exactly. Well, thank you. I appreciate the talk, man. Always love picking your brain.
Yeah.